Mike Zachary. I was born James Michael Zachary, but because I used my middle name, I had to legally change it in 2013.
Oh, yeah. That's funny.
To J, no space, Michael, no middle name, Zachary.
That's funny.
But I was born in Colorado, 1948, so that makes me soon to be 76. Was there for 13 years, or 15 years. My mom died when I was 13, so my dad remarried, and we relocated up to Bellevue, where I went to high school, and that's where Cindy and I met. As she'll tell you, she dumped me our senior year. We went together our junior year. She dumped me for a guy with a Corvette in her senior year.
Well, we're going to go back and actually talk about these events.
Went to Purdue University on a couple of scholarships. Then went in the Navy. Talk about that for a while, because that's a very important part of my life.
Yeah.
Got out of the Navy. I got married before I went in the Navy. Relocated to the San Francisco Bay Area, where my father had just recovered from some brain surgery. Went to work for him. Found out you don't work for your father.
You're a slave? Not a worker?
We can talk a little bit about the different jobs I had back there, but I started an engineering architectural firm in 1980 in Oakland, and it was at the right time of what we call the intermodal era. Containers, moving containers. Containerization has just become very popular. And so I was on the forefront. I rode the wave. I'm still riding the wave. I still do work in there, but
nice.
We became a very well-known firm throughout the world. I worked in virtually every major seaport in North America, in Japan, in Australia, and in Hong Kong, and a couple in Europe.
Wow.
Had a professional life, grew back and forth. I finally formally retired in 2018. Actually, that's all. I'll come back. So I went through a tough time. Our kids, Jim and Kevin, my two sons, graduated from Purdue University and went off on their own. And I loved my wife Joyce at the time, but we looked at each other and we said, "Who are you?" So we kind of had, we were both there for raising the kids, but not there for each other.
Yeah.
The bottom line is we ended up separating and going our different ways. I moved back up to Seattle because I couldn't stand California, and reconnected with her. She was a widow. She was living down in Portland at the time. So we reconnected, and my company, we sold the company in 1995. And the new company, they wanted me up here, and then they didn't want me up here, so I basically left them. Got a job with CH2M Hill up in Bellevue. And then they relocated me down to the Portland office so I could be closer to Cindy. And Cindy's parents and family still lived in Bellevue. Her sons hadn't moved here yet. Her sons are Ben and Michael. And so we moved we lived in Vancouver, Washington, moved up to Lakewood, got a job with the Port of Tacoma at the time, then moved to Burien, and then ended up in Mill Creek. So that's the story into itself.
All right. So that's kind of the outline.
Yep.
And now let's go back to childhood. What was childhood like in Colorado?
Childhood was great in Colorado. It's the 1950s. Rode my bike everywhere. We had organized sports, Little League football, Little League baseball. Didn't have basketball, but most of the time we made up our own games. My neighborhood would play another neighborhood. And so whether it be in football or baseball, we rode our bikes 6-7 miles to the other neighborhood, played a game, and came home.
Yeah.
So it's a Norman Rockwell
yeah.
picture of America.
One thing I tried with kids nowadays, it's everything. It's all about electronics. And it's like, well, before the electronics, kids still played somehow. They still had fun.
Absolutely.
And so they enjoyed life. But with my kids, I have to make sure we balance out, or you can have the parenting style where they have zero electronics. If you want to do that, it's fine. Or have the parenting style where utilize technology where it doesn't own the child, and trying to find that balance where it's like,
well, it's a tough balance, Sean. You need to do it because they need to learn
right,
so they can live in today's world.
right.
I have a grandson that, God love him, he's good, but he refuses to be on social media, which means he's out of contact, and he's missed several important notices that have come via email because he doesn't read his email or doesn't read his texts.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he needs to learn how to get more engaged, whereas some of them need to learn how to get disengaged.
Right. Where it's like making sure the tool doesn't own you.
Yep.
You own the tool. And so trying to teach that to my kids, because we were at a function on Sunday where I saw that there's 3 girls sitting in front of us, teenage girls. And it's about an hour and a half. And the 2 girls, guess what they were doing the whole time?
On the phone.
On their phone. And it's like, okay, that's what people do today. But it was so prevalent where look at it, put it away. 2 seconds later, look at it, put it away. And they're so bored that they're going from app to app to app where it's like, they don't even realize that they're addicted to their phones because they can't function. So it's like, again, to each their own. We live in a free country, but I would argue most people don't want to be that addicted to whatever.
Well, I'm sad. We go to a restaurant, you see a family of 4, and all 4 of them are on their phone.
Yeah.
They're not talking at all.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think that's where the tool owns you. So with my kids, it's like, all right, I told my kids, hey, they're homeschooled. So it's like, all right, let's learn, at least I want you to learn how to type. So my oldest, by the time he was 10, he could write 60, almost 70 words a minute.
But all with his thumbs, right?
No, typing on a computer.
Oh, okay.
I wanted him to learn actually how to type.
Keyboarding.
Because I think that is a useful skill to have. Because if you don't know how to type well, it's going to be pretty hard to.
Let me ask you a question. None of our grandkids can read cursive writing that Cindy and I write them. None. Because they don't teach it in school anymore.
Yeah. My kids are homeschooled. My wife does most of the curriculum. It'd be interesting to see, because I know grammar writes in cursive. I'll have to go test that to see.
You'll test.
I'll go write in cursive, send it to them, and see how they do. I don't know if it's in their curriculum, but I would be curious to see if they know how to read cursive. But I told my wife this. I was like, if they know, as long as they know how to read and write and have internal motivation, that's huge. Because they're looking at kids nowadays that are coming out of school, they can't read or write.
Bingo.
If you can't do, that's like the foundation to learn, right? So that you can go learn whatever it is you're really passionate about. If you get that right, then I feel like we've done a good job. So yeah, my one comment I get all the time is, well, if your kid's homeschooled, how are they going to socialize with other kids? How are they going to do this? How are they going to do that? And it's like my 11-year-old and all my kids, they can have conversations with adults.
I was just going to add to that list of yours, communicate.
Yeah.
The ability to communicate. Starting at your kid age and going all the way through professional careers.
Right.
I probably have hired more than 100 people in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I've probably interviewed close to 1,000. And in the first 10 seconds, you can tell if they can communicate.
Yeah.
And it's even worse nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
Because they want to text you. I'm sitting across the table from you and they're texting me.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I because they're homeschooled, we can be more deliberate about what they learn. And so I told them, like, hey, I'm going to let you guys, I guess you're learning, but like when you hit high school, when you hit 9th grade, so they're 6th grade now, it's like, we're going to get real serious about like how to actually be a successful adult, and teaching those things about like investing and stocks, and not that they'd be an expert at it, but actually I think the two things they don't teach in school, how they really work, is how money really works and how your body really works. Like, we're going to go hard on those. So I'm excited about doing that with them and doing that. So that's the fun thing about being homeschooled, is we can cater. Yes, do they need to learn all this stuff that the district wants them to learn? They take the tests, they do really well, but now it's like, okay, if you're really passionate about that, let's go after it, right? Whatever it is you're really interested in. But it's also make sure we understand some of these other really important things that most people don't understand.
But communication top of the list.
Yeah, 100%.
Read and write. But
yes.
if you can't talk and communicate with all levels.
I joke because I tell Isaac, hey, when you're 18, you can take over to whatever this becomes.
Yeah, there you go.
So, yeah, they can, obviously I'm biased towards my kids, and I actually have some questions to ask you about parenting when we get to that stage. But back to your childhood, played. That's the common theme I hear from guys your age, is you didn't have phones, you didn't have tablets, so you went and interacted with other kids.
We did. And I was, my basketball coach my freshman year says, you're the only guy I know of that could be walking down one quarter and trip somebody in the next quarter. I was very uncoordinated, very tall, and a string bean.
You're like those giraffes that are first born and they trying to figure out.
So my dad had me out. He kind of forced me to run because that helped develop coordination. I did not like him for that. I didn't do it, but I did it, and it turned out that paved my way through life. So,
question about that. So, the topic of parents forcing their child to do something uncomfortable. He resented him for that. But at some point, you stopped resenting him for it, or did you learn to appreciate it later, like when you're an adult?
Very much appreciated it later.
Well, at one point did you stop resenting him for it? Was it until you're adult, or?
No, it was my, so I went to high school, freshman year of high school in Colorado. We moved this between the summer up to Bellevue. And so I started my sophomore year. And I played sophomore football for Bellevue High School. I actually graduated from Newport, but it wasn't built yet. So they put us as a separate class in Bellevue High School. And I was a baseball player. So I went up for the baseball team. And the coach said, Mike, you need, the football coach for Newport says, you need to develop your speed. I want you to go out for track and forget baseball. And I go, I don't know anything about track. And so they had a time trial. And the coach says, I want you to run the mile. And so I got in a race with everybody on the team, which included seniors and varsities. And I finished number 2.
Remember your time?
At that time, it was about 4:50.
Without training?
Without training. And that's exactly what the coach said. And I said, well, my dad made me run when I was a young kid. So I ran several miles.
Did he ever run with you?
No, my dad was great. He was an All-American football player at Purdue, but he grew old and fat.
Yeah, like a lot of guys.
So he worked hard, but he didn't do this.
So middle school years, he made you go run.
He made me go run. Every morning.
You hated him.
I did.
Hearing all that.
After the moment I crossed the finish line.
Stop hating him.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I think parents today, and I've had conversations with other older men about this, they're scared to put their kids in uncomfortable positions. And it's like, well, if you want to get anywhere in life, you sometimes have to be put in uncomfortable positions. But then you can also go too far, where you can push a kid too far, where they do resent you for maybe their whole life.
That's true. So my two boys, Jim and Kevin, we encouraged them strongly to participate in activities. Both of them were very athletic. One had to try harder than the other to be where he
What's the age difference?
18 months.
That's like my boys. So this is great. So the younger one is always, maybe I'm curious what your experience was with your boys. Did he feel like, man, I have to try? He didn't like being in the shadow of his older brother with my kids. Was that the case for you guys? So how did you?
Well, the older one had to really, really work. And he did a damn good job in really, really working. He was a Division I level athlete.
Wow. What sport?
Track.
Impressive.
And cross country. He helped his high school win the first state championship in cross country that they ever won. But he had to work at it. The second one was a totally gifted athletic child, but he saw how hard his brother wanted to work, or his brother was working, and he succeeded, but he succeeded without, giving the level of effort that his brother did.
Did that frustrate the older brother?
No.
So they were, did you ever, like looking back, you saw that, but in the moment, did you have conversations with them about it?
No.
Or you just,
we tried to tell them. So once I got in high school, we said, look, we've given you the options, soccer, baseball, football, basketball. You tried them all, running. It's really up to you. And if you're not going to give the level of effort that's going to be required, then it's not worth your time or our time to do that. So it's going to be your choice at this point in time. So, their freshman year of high school, they were both involved in sports. One went on to continue. The other one says, I want to do something else.
Yeah. All right. Back to, maybe we'll talk about that more later, but back to you, elementary played. Here's, in the winter in Colorado, what'd you do? Because you can't be outside as much, or you could.
What did you do?
You did go outside.
Oh, yeah. You had to.
I found winters here can be a little difficult because it's not wet, cold, and rainy.
We had, Colorado has 300 days of sunshine.
Yeah.
And during the winter, it would snow and snow a lot, but we'd walk to the bus stop, through 6 feet of snow.
Uphill both ways.
Uphill both ways.
Barefoot.
No, we walk. We would go to the bus stop. We'd dress, but we'd go skiing a lot.
Yeah.
That's where I learned to ski. Skiing, not snowboarding. We'd go sledding at we had this big hill near our house that they would close down in snowy weather and use that as a sledding hill. It was about half a mile long.
Yeah, and I'm assuming like all of this during all this time, your parents are just at home. They don't know where the kids are. They're not watching every moment.
They're at that, right? Well, his dad was working. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and she was not healthy, so she was, she couldn't get out most of the time. So, yeah, just what? We're going sledding.
Yeah. You said at 13 your mom passed away?
She did.
How was that for you?
Well, it was very traumatic in terms of she passed away in 1962. And the problem was at the time is I was not 18, so I was not allowed to see her.
Oh, when she was like in the hospital?
She was in the hospital, so I was not allowed to see her.
Wow.
So for the last 4 weeks of her life, I knew my dad would come home every night and tell me how she's doing. I said, I want to see her. And he said, can't do that.
Really?
So nowadays, kids 6 years old walk into, dying relative or something.
Yeah.
It was dumb. It was stupid. And
that's really sad.
I really miss
and grief
saying goodbye to her.
Yeah, that's sad. What did she die of?
Breast cancer. But she had tuberculosis. She had asthma. She had severe arthritis. So she was not a healthy woman. In the last probably 5 years of her life, both my dad and I took care of her in terms of she was bedridden most of the time.
So that probably made you grow up fast.
Oh, absolutely.
To take care of an adult.
Absolutely.
How many kids were how many siblings did you have?
I have a sister who's 8 years younger than I am.
Okay, so we were like an only child.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. No question. My sister will remind me of that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's 6 years to me and my sister, and it's like, I was pretty much the only child, because when I was in sixth grade, she left, and then it's like, just me and the parents.
Yeah.
So that forced you to grow up real fast, probably starting at age 7 or 8, when you as a child are having to take care of an adult.
Mhm.
But you don't know any different, because that's the life you had. Obviously, you can look back and be like, that's not normal for a child. But when she actually passed away, what were some of the thoughts and feelings you had at that time? Well, it's not fair. Life's not fair. Or you're like,
I don't know if it's not fair, just really disappointed and sad. It's interesting. My dad, who has his own interesting history, that's the first time I ever saw him cry, which made a great impression on me.
mm-hmm.
It's like, why don't you, share your feelings more often?
Yeah.
And
well, I don't think men did that back then.
no, he didn't. And he and I never actually, I can tell you that, well, he and I never actually hugged each other until the mid 1970s.
Yeah. And then would you say that's common back then?
Oh, absolutely.
And then boys,
Absolutely.
you had respect, but maybe not love. He knew he loved you, but he never said it.
Well, it wasn't demonstrated.
Yeah.
There was no vocal demonstration of it. There was no physical demonstration of it.
And that's because his dad probably didn't do it.
Oh, absolutely. Well, well, like I said, he's got his own story. That different time, different time. But no, it was. I knew that he loved me because he would support me in everything I did.
Mm-hmm.
He was a strict disciplinarian. My rear end got tanned a lot. And that's quite another thing. I feel that for young kids, that I have no qualms with a parent appropriately applying physical.
So we could talk about this now. I literally, when I was driving here, I was talking to one of my friends. I said, obviously I have friends with kids. And it's like, I was talking to my wife, and it's like, I feel like I'm doing a disservice to my adult friends if I don't say anything to them about the way their child is behaving.
Bingo.
And my wife's like, well, but then we see them regularly. So
If it's how you deliver the message, it's not
right. And that's what my buddy was saying. He's like, well, you need to deliver pretty tactfully. Because I asked him, I was like, dude, so we've been friends for about 10 years. And so the guy I just got off the phone with, I actually haven't hung out with him and his kids. So I don't know how he is. But I asked him, I was like, if I had a serious conversation with you and it was like, hey, in a loving manner, saying, hey, I see the way your kids are acting. It's probably not, whatever. How would you feel? And he's like, dude, I'd be pretty angry. And it's like, but I'm trying to do it out of love, because if you continue down this path with your kids, probably not going to end up that great. Could they? Sure. Can kids do it 180? Sure.
And don't want to sound like a curmudgeon, but I think that what is shocking me today is the number of hit and runs, the number of smash and grabs.
Yeah.
And it's, I truly believe that the young people of today know that there's no consequence for their actions. Therefore they don't take responsibility for their action.
So since you've been around a lot longer than me, I think this generation is not being raised well. But does every generation think that?
Yes.
So then it's like, well, how much of it was just youthfulness, right? I don't know that, because I haven't been around for multiple cycles. I don't know. So like when you were 35 and you saw these kids that were 10 to 20, did you feel the same way? Or
No, not that. I think, I'm the product of the 60s.
Yeah.
So, the older generation, the greatest generation, looked at us like, what are you doing? You're going against the establishment.
Yeah.
That's But I think my generation said, yeah, we are, but we're going to take responsibility for our actions.
Yeah.
We want things to change, but we're going to stand up and make them change, but do it in a maybe you don't respect the manner in which we're doing it, but we're going to take responsibility for that doing it. And I think my son's generation and even the generation behind them, I totally agree with you. But again, I read in the paper this morning, in terms of all the people that got shot and killed and hit and run and everything else, they're all under 30.
Yeah, it's a funny story, sad, funny. Anyway, so Saturday we lost internet at 4 a.m. I don't know why. I woke up at 4. It's kind of like my brain knew the Wi-Fi stopped for. I woke up at 4 a.m. and I thought, well, maybe the thermostat's not. Maybe the heater turned on, so I woke up. I tried to pull up my thermostat, didn't work. So I was like, oh, Wi-Fi is off. That's weird. So we didn't have internet all day Wednesday, or all day Saturday, which is like, whoa, like you should be okay. And it's like, we were, but it was weird. Not like my kids, like just Wi-Fi didn't work at all. So I was talking to my neighbor a few days later, and I was like, did you have internet? And he's like, well, I don't have Comcast. But he's like, you know why you didn't have internet? I was like, why? He said, well, Saturday, this is right down the street.
Right.
Saturday, a dude, so we have an apartment maybe a mile down the road. Someone in a stolen vehicle shot someone in the parking lot, drove off in their stolen vehicle down right by my house, and then crashed into a pole, which must have been like a Comcast hub.
Right, there you go.
Which is why I lost internet. So it was a weird day, 'cause all day no internet. But then knowing what happened, it's like, yeah, because we have so much crime happening. And but was crime a thing? Did you have this kind of crime before? I don't know. I don't have perspective to know.
Well,
or was it more victimless crime before?
No, we had crime, but there was a consequence. You paid for it, and you knew you were going to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
I when I was a young kid, I stole a friend's toy rifle. And I was stupid. I was dumb. I thought I could get away with it. No, my dad found out about it. Got my hide tanned and restricted, and it taught me that there's consequences of doing something stupid.
Yeah.
Fast forward, a good friend of ours, same exact situation. His 11-year-old stole something, and I asked him what he did to it. He said, well, I talked to him. I said, and well, what did and he said, yeah, I told him not to anymore. I said, well, what were the consequences? Well, you parenting, well, you can't restrict them. You can't hit them. You can't spank them anymore. I said, why not? Well, you call into my child services. I said, that's BS. And the fact that you didn't restrict them, you just said, don't do it again. There's no consequence to that.
Yeah.
And what makes you think he's not going to do it again?
Yeah.
The same thing. Now he's going to go do drugs. Now he's going to, until he gets something that he, thinks he really, really wants, and it could be fueling a drug problem, and so therefore he goes and steals a car or a woman's purse, or does something really, really dumb, because he knows that there's no consequence to it. I mean, look at the smash and grabs and the blatant shoplifting in front of the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's on cameras because no one's going to stop them.
Yeah, I try not to read the news because it can be pretty sad, but I saw an article where I think it was Walmart, one of those stores where the guy was stealing and he hit one of the workers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hit the worker, so he injured the worker. So 2 other workers finally were like, all right, we're going to subdue this guy. They got fired.
Yeah.
And it's like,
no consequence.
it's like, really? Like, they were, okay, I get it. It's not worth your life. Because I've worked retail before, and they taught us, like, if someone's stealing, just let them steal, right? It's not your stuff. But then when they hurt one of your fellow colleagues, I would hope my my colleagues would have my back and be like, all right, let's go get this guy. And they fired him. They fired the guys trying to protect their colleague. And it's like,
that has nothing to do with a shoplifting policy. That has to do with defending your employee.
mhm.
But anyway, we digress.
Yeah. So you, let's go back to high school. You were really fast at running.
Well, my freshman year of high school, again in Colorado, I played on the freshman football team. And at the end of the season, I got elevated to the JV team. So I felt I mentioned my dad was an All-American football player, and he really supported me in that. So I really loved football. I got a little cocky sometimes, and I paid a consequence for doing that many times. But it gave me confidence. I think that was one of the things that I had. So when I moved up to, so Colorado was a 4-year system. Moved up to Bellevue. It was a 3-year system at the time. So
You didn't do it in ninth grade?
no, they had just sophomore, junior, and seniors. So again, as we entered, brand new kid, but I'm coming in as everybody else is a brand new kid. They hadn't had a year to go. They came from 3 different junior high schools.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody was kind of on equal footing, but I had the confidence to say I can do.
Because you had done it.
They said, yeah. So they said, we need a center, and I'm the string bean. But I ended up as a wide receiver, called them split.
Were you
ends.
tall then back?
Oh yeah, I was 6 foot at the time,
Yeah.
but weighed 120 pounds. Well, maybe 150. But they said, well, can you center a ball? And so I said, it's kind of like throwing a pass backwards. So I became the starting center on the football team.
Did you enjoy that?
I loved it.
Really? Because so my kids play flag football. Who gets all the glory?
Yeah.
The running back, the wide receiver, and the quarterback.
Yeah. No,
The center is like, who doesn't get much glory. So it's interesting that you embrace that role.
Well, I embrace it, and the reason why I embrace it, and the reason why I'm very adamantly proposal of a football, tackle football, and call it hazing, but proper hazing, is you form a team, and you are a team.
Yeah.
And no matter what position you play on that team, you have a role, and so you learn the role that you play for that team. Now, I changed my junior year. I became the split end because they figured I can catch, and they had another guy that was a better center than me. So I ended up starting, junior and senior as a split end, but you learn that role. And I didn't tell you in the beginning, I spent 28 years officiating high school, youth, and small college football.
Oh, really?
So I got back in the game in 1992 as an official, and it was my job as an official to make sure that the game is played safe.
Mm-hmm.
And if the coaching is right and the equipment is worn properly, it's a very safe game.
You see, California's they put a bill in to ban tackle football before age 12.
That's stupid. And the reason it's stupid is because, you have coaches. So I'm at a game. It's a youth game. And it was when the National Federation of High Schools just passed the rule about leading with a helmet. And they went out to everybody and says, you will enforce this rule. And so we had a kid on a team that was, he was leading with a helmet as a runner and as a tackler. And we warned the coach, he can't do it. He did it again, we threw a flag. He did it again, we threw a flag. This time the entire stands are booing us. I mean, they're yelling and screaming, let him play, let him play. And I stopped the game. And I went over to the stands and I said, my job is to protect your kid. So he doesn't end up in a hospital. I said, the National Federation just put out a new ruling about the injuries, neck injuries for tackling with a helmet.
Mm-hmm.
Your coach is responsible for ensuring that they're taught how to not lead with their head. I grew up playing football where you led with your head, and thank God I didn't have a neck injury. But,
Yeah.
that's the rules, and we're going to enforce the rules. And it's not because we don't like playing the game. It's for your kids' protection. And there was dead silence.
Yeah, when you actually when you confront them with the facts, then it's hard to be like,
right. And the coach came up afterwards and says, thank you. He says, I've been trying to teach them the right way. But again, there was no consequence. You're the first guy that and it happened to be that I was, youth football, I'm probably the most senior official there, where we worked a couple state championships at the time. So, I had the respect of the coaches that I knew what I was doing.
mm-hmm.
And, the young kids, we had high school kids that were officiating. They were afraid to throw a flag because they didn't want to get the wrath of the parents out.
Yeah. You had the ability to actually call it.
So, yeah. No, that's one of my proud achievements as being a football official. I really enjoyed that. And
that was like a hobby for you. That was normal.
Yep.
Normal work. Yeah. One thing is I think about child development, right, for my kids, and it's like, if your kid is never put in uncomfortable positions, how do you expect them to succeed in life? You have to be willing to push through hard times, right?
That's why I refer to as, people will call it hazing. But no, when you do 2-a-day football practices as a team, and you're sweating and you're mad at the coach for making you do this unpleasant exercise, but you're doing it and everybody's doing it.
Yeah.
And
you're all out there. Yeah.
They're all out there and they're all doing that. It's a bonding experience.
So yeah, sports, and maybe you can help give me perspective outside of sports. So if we think evolutionary, like the Spartans, right? What did they had to be really good at? War. Because before the past few hundred years, it was all about war, preparing your kids for hard life, which was war, or it was the farm, or it was usually something really physical.
Yeah.
Well, in today's society, we don't have to, right?
Right.
And so for me, my kids, it's like, all right, how do I make sure when they're 18, not that they know all the answers, but they're at least prepared for adulthood? And for me, yeah, I have found sports to be that, because it's like they played basketball, they played flag football, and, doing those things, you realize, like when my oldest, he basketball, he loves basketball. When he went to football, because it wasn't like his main sport, he actually enjoyed it because he didn't have all the pressure to be number one. It just so happened he's really athletic. So he was the running back, the wide receiver, and he had a lot of fun. But then he also realized, because he wasn't the main guy, he could do 100% his best. But if other people didn't, they could still lose the game. So that was a learning lesson to him, is like, you could go out 100% in life, but so does all your teammates. And what happens if your teammates don't? So that was, and I don't know outside of sports how to teach them life lessons like that. I haven't learned how to do that yet.
Well, the physical contact sports are 10 on the level of teamwork and contribution and reward. The non-contact sports are about an 8.
Yeah.
There are other social activities where it encourages teamwork. My granddaughter is on the robotics team at her high school.
Yeah.
It's not physical, it's mental, but they're working together and they're learning how to contribute as a team. That's about a 6.
Yeah.
But, if you get anything below that, you're not developing them to learn how to be part of society.
Right.
And they don't understand what teamwork means, and they don't understand what it takes to be a member of a team.
Yeah. So yeah, I found sports to be, and here's the funny thing about sports. And I had a really good walk with my son yesterday. So we joined the Y. We did that last winter because it was like our kids were getting older, and I was like, all right, what do we do in the winter? We would stay home and play Uno all day, right? Like, okay. So my buddy of mine was like, dude, my daughter does gymnastics 5 hours and 5 times a week. And I was like, okay, maybe I can try out this whole Y thing. Absolutely loved it. Kids enjoyed it. But I went on a walk with my son yesterday, my 11-year-old, and just talking about letting him do most of the talking, letting him process
Bingo. Good job.
what are his thoughts. So they're going through an interesting experience. Maybe the coaches will see this. They were on a team. So last year on the Y, that team went undefeated, won the championship. So they were all thinking they're really good. And obviously as a parent, I know like, hey, it's the Y. Like, it's the Y, not anything crazy. So then that team was like, all right, let's go do AAU, which is like, as parents, we know like that's a whole nother level. These kids, like, it's like a part-time job for them. So they went and did 2 tournaments, 0-7, got destroyed. For my kids, it was good because they realized like, oh, we thought we were good. And then we went and played kids that are actually good. Not saying my kids are bad, but it was like, there's always someone out there that's better than you. And that hopefully that humbles you to be like, I need to work harder. So anyways, this season, they were playing with their old team. After a game, we just didn't really like the direction where that team and coach was going. So I was talking to the youth director, and I was like, kind of joking, but I was like, hey, do you have any other teams that maybe are short staffed? So his team had 14 players. So that first game or two, they're just sitting on the bench most of the time.
Yeah.
It wasn't very fun. And the youth director was like, actually, I coach a team, and we only have 6 players.
Huh.
So I was like, and he played basketball in college, Division II. And he's like mid-20s. So not only can he do the thing, but he still looks like the thing and enjoys the thing.
Yeah.
Where the other coaches were just, again, nothing against dads, but they never played at any level. They were just more like yelling. It was very negative. And I could sense that from the practices. The boys weren't having fun. When they were playing the game, just no fun. So we switched over, having a ton of fun now. Like the first game afterwards, my boys were knocking down. He knocked down like 3 threes, just having a ton of fun.
Perfect.
So it's super fun on Friday. They're playing their old team.
Oh,
So that's going to be really interesting to see how that goes. Because both teams are, I think, undefeated this season.
Wow.
They've both done 4 games. So this will be game 5. So obviously someone's going to lose. And my kids will learn a lot from this lesson because it's like, sometimes when you make a decision, it's good for someone and someone else is going to be sad. Right? Because when they switched teams, that new team was happy, but that old team and coach players were sad. So super fun. I like seeing it's fun when you get to experience lessons with your kids and see them grow through that.
well, I have just a quick story on that. So my younger son, and like I said, he tried, but he very, very athletically inclined, but he got on a team, soccer team, and he was not the starter, the youth soccer team. And he didn't play a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And they're required to play 1 quarter, out of 4. And so we get to a game and they have 11 players. So I'm going, okay, fine. This is a great opportunity for them to at least play half the game.
Well, he has to play the whole game.
He didn't. He played a quarter.
But there's
So I went to the coach after and said, "Have you understand why? What's going on here?" And he said, "Well, it's very simple." He says, he's part of a team. He's. And I said, you're not. Well, he talked about they're going out and winning the championships. I said, you're not Vince Lombardi. Yeah. Your job is to make him grow. And he goes, well, I think my job is to win. Anyway, fast forward. So Kevin, his birthday was December 1st, and he played in a tackle football league. And he, the league that he'd been playing in for the last 4 years, said, you're 1 minute too old. You have to go to Walnut Creek and play in that league. And so we went over to the coach of Walnut Creek, and the coach of Walnut Creek said, sure, I'll let him play, but I have 2 requirements. One of which is I need to talk to him one-on-one without you in the room. And 2 is you have to attend a mandatory parents meeting. And we go, okay. So he talked to Kevin. Well, it turns out Kevin says that, well, all he did was ask me if, am I doing this for me or am I doing it because my parents are making me do it? And Kevin said, I want to play. So he goes, okay, fine. So we go to the mandatory parents meeting, and it's outside of this high school, and they have a 40-foot container there, and on the side of the container is a 4x8 sheet of plywood.
Mm-hmm.
And he's talking about conditioning and his and somebody, and I'm beginning to think nowadays that it was a plant. But somebody says, Coach, what's your winning record? And he goes, well, I'm glad you asked that. So he goes up to the board and he takes his 4x8 sheet of plywood and opens it up so it's now 4x16. And there's just a whole bunch of names on the board. He goes, my record is as follows. He says, every one of those with a green dot played high school football. He said, every one of those with a red dot played college football. He says, see those 4 gold stars? Those are my NFL players.
Wow.
That's my winning record.
Yeah.
He said, my job is to teach the kids to play every position on the field and have them pick one because they want to play that.
Yeah.
So he says, I'll take a 280-pound guy that would, other coach would put a guard or a center, and I'll put him as a halfback. I'll put him as an end. Let him play it. Let him see what his strengths are, and let him go after it. And he says, I will play them at every position this year, and we may not win a game, but I'm going to win the hearts of those kids.
Yeah.
I said, that's my coach.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good. Because you want a coach that actually cares about the kid, cares about their development.
Now, fast forward. You not only want a coach, you want a teacher. Mm-hmm. You want an employer. You want a family member. Go back to your conversation with your friend. You want somebody who takes care in understanding that it's not the end result of a win.
Mm-hmm.
It's how you get there that makes the difference.
Yeah. Man, we're still talking about your high school.
Oh.
So, we don't get to go too much more into sports, but let me ask you this. So when you graduated high school, did you know what you want to do in life?
I applied to Purdue University my junior year, was accepted. I wanted to be an engineer.
So you knew you wanted to be an engineer.
My dad was an engineer. I was good in math.
Okay.
And physics. I loved it. Made a lot of models in my youth. So I applied to several engineering colleges. Was accepted at Purdue. My dad, I was 3rd generation at Purdue.
Huh. So that had something to do with it, maybe.
Had something to do with it, but no, I knew that my senior year, that I was going to go to Purdue and be an engineer.
So what would you tell an 18-year-old today that doesn't quite know what they want to do in life?
Well, the first thing I would do is tell them what my dad told me, and I told my kids. I took a map. He took a map of Washington, and he said, there's Bellevue, and he drew a big circle around it and said, that's a 5-hour drive. You can go to any school outside that circle.
So he wanted you to leave.
He says, I do not want you coming home on the weekends to get a meal or have your clothes washed by somebody. You're going to live on your own.
That's funny. Yeah. Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, there was Washington State and Oregon State were outside that limit. And I said, well, I want to go to Wisconsin, Colorado, and Notre Dame, and I forget the other school. And he goes, where'd you get that list? I said, well, it was the top 5 schools at Playboy. And he goes, okay, we're going to throw that list away, and we'll try again. So, yeah, but again, here's today's. I never had been to Purdue for a college visit. I ended up going back there on a track scholarship, half scholarship.
What was your best mile time?
4:07.
So you couldn't break 4?
No.
Was that sad?
Yeah.
You're so close. But I understand 7 seconds is,
but
it's hard.
No, I never run, because I played football, I never run cross country. So I ran cross country for Purdue.
Was it 7K, 8K?
At the time, that was a 5K. They were running back.
What was your best 5K?
I have no idea.
You think were you under 15?
Oh, I've read it. Yes, when I was under 15. I did that in high school.
in high school?
Um, but no, but freshmen were not, not allowed to be on a varsity team, so we only had 3 years of eligibility, which is why I laugh at a guy who's just announced he's playing his 7th year at college football.
Yeah, I was watching, obviously, you went far this year and you're like, 7th-year college player. And I'm like, how's that? That doesn't happen. Red shirt. I don't know.
3 years and that was it.
And then I think COVID was like so it was like, he's 30 years old. And you're like, how does this work?
So I went to Purdue on a track scholarship, and then I ended up getting a Navy ROTC scholarship.
So what made you interested in the Navy?
I'd always been interested in
So as a kid, you played like soldier.
of course, everybody did, and I look back on it, World War II was 20 years old.
Yeah, so you knew a lot of veterans that
everybody
told stories.
and all the movies were, World War II movies. And so you kind of grew up that generation. So yeah, I wanted to be a naval officer. Don't ask me why, but I kind of went in that direction.
Was Navy SEALs a thing back then?
No, I mean, they were there, but they weren't, it wasn't a thing.
It's not as popular as it is today.
I had a lot to do with movies. No. So I went through school, and I worked my way through. I joined a fraternity, Kappa Sigma. I encourage any young man and young lady to join a Greek system.
Why?
Communication. It teaches you responsibilities. Again, a team. Okay, you're the treasurer for this semester. How do I do that? Well, you better learn. So yeah, you learn responsibilities. You pledge life, and
All right, let's pause right there and actually talk about college today.
okay.
So, in the sauna today, talking to a 24-year-old who literally just got hired by LA Fitness a week and a half ago. And so, I think there was a time where college made 100% sense people to go because they were actually learning real skills that were helping them for the workforce. This kid is now 24. I don't know when he graduated. I'm assuming a couple of years. But he works as a sales guy at LA Fitness with a social service degree. And so I'm sometimes, I love talking to old guys because I have 100% respect for them because it's like, hey, you know a lot that I don't, so I can learn a lot from you. I challenge, some people say maybe a little aggressive, but if you're 20 to 30, I will challenge you.
Good.
And sometimes it's beneficial. Sometimes, so the other day I was in the sauna, and this guy that was 20 years old was in the sauna, and him and his buddy, we were just kind of like, I was like, oh, what do you do? And he's like, I'm a car salesman in real estate. So then we started talking about like just the concept of sales and what's the difference between manipulation, what's the difference between sales, what's the difference between education.
Oh boy.
Yeah, this guy was not ready for this conversation. And so, because there's a guy that's up and coming now. His name is Andy Elliott, and he's supposedly the top salesperson in the world, trainer. And so he does shorts and all this stuff. So it's very interesting. Start off his car sales. So we're talking about that. And so when he left, there's another guy, an older gentleman in the locker room. When they walked into the changing room, he knew that those guys had just encountered me. And so he starts laughing because those guys are like, man, I just want to enjoy the sauna. And this guy's going in there just going off. So he starts laughing because he knows, oh, they were talking to Josiah. But this conversation today was actually good. Because I try to get people to think. Like, look, you don't have to believe what I believe. But at least if I can get you to reevaluate or just think differently about something, then I feel like I've done my part and hopefully making some impact on your day, right? So the 24 is sitting there and he's like, yeah, dude, I just couldn't get job. And I was like, what's really sad is people don't talk about the trades. People don't talk about, so I'm going to interview like a firefighter. I want to interview people from all walks of life. So there's a guy I met at the gym, paramedic. He's like, dude, I'm one of the highest paid workers for the city of Everett because of how much time I get paid OT.
Mm-hmm.
We don't talk about that stuff. And it's like, and I was talking to the 24-year-old, I was like, he's like, no one told me in my high school years that was a valid route. I didn't have to go to college.
Right.
You know? And now he's 24, and it's like, this guy probably would have enjoyed a trade. He probably would have enjoyed, there's so many different things out there that you don't have to go to college for. Where it's like, yeah, when my parents went to college, yeah, it was great. Didn't have to go into crazy amount of debt. Or now when these kids are going to college, it's like ton of debt. They get out of college and they don't really have any real skill set. And so who knows how long this kid has been looking for a job, but finally, and again, I'm not saying being a sales guy at LA is a bad job, but he knows he doesn't enjoy it. He's just like, it's the only job I can get. And so that's the framework of what we're talking about is college. Is it as valuable today as it was when you were a young person?
No, and I want to say that because exactly what you just mentioned, there are too many other avenues. Post-high school education, I think, is extremely important.
Yes.
Doesn't have to be college, it can be a community college, it can be a trade school. The biggest thing I got out of my 4.5 years was time management. I was ROTC. I worked as a waiter in a sorority. I had track practice year round. We had ROTC drills, and we had, I had things I had to do, and missing class was not one of them. So making classes on a 7:30 Saturday morning.
Online class wasn't a thing back then.
Online, you didn't do that. But the biggest thing was, again, you're interacting with people, and you got study groups that you could learn how to trust, and you got study groups that you knew they were just going to go out and party. You weren't going to get anything done. So no, time management, learning responsibility to live on your own and being able to accomplish something is key. Now, does it take 4 years to do that? No, probably 2 years. So community college, but living at home. And
you're not
online,
growing up fast.
You're not growing up. You need to get out and do it. And go to a trade school. You're forced to live. Get it. And if you could, I understand economics and living at home, but you can't. You got to learn how to live on your own.
Yeah.
And at the same time, learn a skill. And I think that's what that's what I learned out of college. Yeah, I came out with an engineering degree, but my dad said, I told my kids, all that does is give you a sheepskin that tells you how to go learn more.
Right.
You're not going to come out. I graduated as an industrial engineer, but I went right into the Navy, and I became I was in the Naval Civil Engineering Corps.
How long were you in the Navy for?
I was on active duty for almost 5 years, 4.5 years.
5 years.
Then I was in the reserves for another 10.
Okay, so you went in as an officer. Let's talk about your time in the Navy.
It was interesting. First of all, I just got married. I got married in December of 1970.
How old are you?
At that time, I was 22.
And how old were you when you met her? You had mentioned it earlier, but
well,
you met in high school?
No, that's.
Oh, okay.
No, I met Joyce, private junior
in college. Okay.
at Purdue. Her last name was Greasy.
And I don't know. So I'm actually prior military as well. When you went, I don't know what the Navy calls it. Is it boot camp, basic training? What do they call it?
Boot camp.
So boot camp, whereas officers have their own.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's what our OTC was.
Okay, so ROTC, you didn't have to go to. If you did ROTC, you didn't actually have to go to a boot camp like an enlisted person would.
No. So at ROTC, you learn naval history. You do drills. So we marched all over the place. We did PT. We did all sorts of stuff.
Lots of yelling and all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so they're still aggressive.
We had Marine Corps guys.
Okay. Still aggressive,
Yeah.
then.
But not as intense as a boot camp.
Yeah.
Because you're still college. You're still
Right.
have to go to school.
Because even if you are an ROTC, you don't actually have to join the Navy.
Well, back then you did, especially if they paid for your college education.
But like, what would they do if you actually didn't go?
If I dropped out, depending on when I dropped out. So when I went in, I had a 4-year commitment in the regular Navy as an officer.
Mm-hmm.
If I dropped out, then they could, and they did. They would immediately put me as an enlisted and give me orders to go.
Okay, so you actually signed paperwork to be like, I will do this. If I don't, then you guys own my life or whatever.
Right.
Okay.
And so ROTC, if you didn't do the 4-year scholarship and you did a 2-year, you had a 2-year commitment as a reserve.
Mm-hmm.
And some, this was, toward the end of the Vietnam era, late 60s, early 70s, the Navy was paring down. So some guys never served.
Yeah.
I went in and served. So
Did you go to Vietnam?
so I was in the Civil Engineer Corps, which is the officer division of the CDs, Naval Construction Battalions. So I graduated in January, and in February I went to a specialty school in Port Hueneme, California, which teaches you the different components of the Civil Engineer Corps, one of which is CD training. So we kind of did a boot camp field exercise to turn on CDs. CDs, if you're not familiar with them, they go and do forward construction. So the CDs of World War II built all the airfields and roads in South Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
The CDs of Vietnam went in and built advanced camps for the Marine Corps and the Army. So to answer your question is, I had orders to a CD battalion, NMCD 71, that had orders to Vietnam. And again, I just recently been married, so, it was not a happy time of my life. So we reported to Davisville, Rhode Island, which is where the battalion was headquartered. And they said, well, our orders have been changed. We're no longer going to Vietnam. You have a choice. You can go to Diego Garcia for 9 months, or you can go to Antarctica for 6 months. Being newly married, I said, I'll go to Antarctica.
Really? I'm assuming your spouse doesn't go with you.
Oh, no.
There's no base over there.
It's like going on a ship.
Yeah.
So,
What are you guys doing in Antarctica?
the Navy's Seabees had all the construction under contract for the National Science Foundation. They were responsible for all the construction and maintenance of all the U.S. bases in Antarctica.
Yeah, we won't go too much into that. I know there's a lot of conspiracy theories about what's going on up there. And
That's down there.
heard.
I was at the South Pole.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so interesting. So you were there. It's cold, I'm assuming?
The highest it got at the South Pole was -5.
What did you do there?
We built.
What did you do, though?
I had 120 Seabees under my command, and we constructed a brand new station at the South Pole. The old station was built in 1957, was being crushed. This was 1971, 72. So we built a brand new station with a geodesic dome.
I'm assuming it's different building stuff under cold weather.
Well, that was a learning experience, and yes.
Yeah. Because I know, like, just putting a roof on, we had the few days of cold weather, like, oh, we can't do this because it's cold. So I'm assuming engineering is
We would,
under extreme temperatures.
you'd go out and work for 20 minutes. You'd come back in and warm up for 40. Go back. Yeah, that's what we did.
Very slow going.
So, and then my second tour of duty was at Southern California.
So do you enjoy cold weather now? Or you're like, I'm good?
Well, my wife will tell me that, yes.
When you experienced it like that, you're like,
I would prefer cold over heat. I mean, hot. I mean, we were in Panama last 2 weeks ago on a cruise, and it was miserable, and it was only 90 degrees, which is another reason why I moved back up to the Northwest,
yeah.
So I love the cooler.
Yeah, but when you're frozen, it's like,
Well, you dress for it. Yeah, you don't want to free.
Yeah. Interesting. What was your second station?
Marine Corps Air Station in El Toro, Southern California.
Yeah, that's completely opposite.
Yep.
Temperature.
But I was also in charge of construction, so all the construction contracts that the base had came through my office. So I laughed because I had a fraternity brother that went to the Navy, and he was same thing. I was ROTC. He served 4 years. He was on an aircraft carrier the entire time, and he could have gotten off in 2 years, but no, he enjoyed it. I said, "What'd you do?" He said, "I was a special services officer in charge of all the vending machines on an aircraft carrier." He had a staff of 80 people working for him. He had to replenish and supply all the vending machines, which were over 100 of them. And he had to review all the movies.
That was his job.
That was his job.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
No, he was in charge of 80 people that did that. So I said, "So what did you do?" He said, "Well, I watched a lot of movies." So his resume, I don't know how he doctored it up, but I came out with professional experience on construction, on planning construction, on critical path management, on contract management and contracts, and
You actually learn real life skills.
I learned real life skill.
A lot of people in the military don't.
I came out with a great resume after my CV career. And then in the reserves, I was again attached to another CV battalion. So,
but when you do reserves, how much work can you actually get done?
well, I tell people one of my more stupider moves in life was I had called 4.5 years of active duty, 10 years. I had close to 16 years of retirement credits in the Navy. And I got out.
So if you do 20, you would have gotten something?
Absolutely. I would have retired, and I got out as a lieutenant commander.
Yeah. What is that? Oh, what?
That's 1, 2, 3, 4.
4. But even if you do 20 years, I'm sure the math's a little different if some of it's reserve. It's not like equal.
No, the same.
The same math.
Yeah. So I would have had credits for 20-year credits. Now, a normal reserve for me was supposed to be 2 weeks of active duty a year and 1 weekend a month. Well, I could do that.
Yeah.
But I became in a position, and I was in San Francisco area, so Treasure Island was the headquarters, and the commanding officer, who was an active duty commanding officer, said, "I want my staff, my officer staff, that's local in here every Tuesday. Every Tuesday night, we're going to have a staff meeting."
Was that legal?
Sure was.
Are you getting paid for that?
No. You get credits for it. So every Tuesday night, and then I was what they call Alpha Company Commander, which meant that I was the head of all the equipment. And the reserve battalion had detachments throughout all of California, Nevada, and Oregon. And so they would have separate detachments, but they'd have equipment there. So I'd have to go on the weekends. So I ended up spending 2 to 3 weekends on doing drills.
A month. Where it's normally 1 weekend a month.
Right. And we'd do 2 weeks active duty. And then there was at least another week where I had to go to some conference or some sort of training. So I spent,
So it's pretty involved.
Very involved.
It's not like the typical warrior.
And that's when my kids were starting to start high school.
Yeah.
You didn't want
to miss out on all that.
I had started a business in 1980. We started this business. So it's now 1985, 1986. And I'm going, I got this business that's requiring my time. I got a marriage that's requiring my time. I got raising kids that's requiring my time, And at the time I said, I really want to start officiating football, but I can't do that if I'm gone 3 weekends out of the month.
Yeah.
So I said, no, I got to get out.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Yeah. Well, like I said, if I stick around for 4 more years and found
but then your kids are gone.
Or found a bill now hindsight says, well, you could have gone to one of these little things over here and basically done remote.
Yeah.
So, they didn't offer me that. So.
Yeah. So Navy, what happens when you get out of the Navy?
I got out of the Navy, and like I said, my dad had
Do you have kids by then?
oh yeah, my dad in 1975 on active duty. My dad had brain surgery in November of '74. He had his own company, and he had one guy working for him. And so I tried to get out of the Navy at the time to come help him. I had no intention of joining. I just needed to babysit the company while he recovered. And the Navy said, "Fine, take some time off, but we're not letting you out. You're regular Navy, so you got to come back." And so it took a year and a half for me requesting to get out of the Navy for me to actually get out of the Navy.
Mm.
So in 1975, I got released from active duty, moved up to the Bay Area and started working for him. He was recovering.
What was that business?
It was a manufacturing sales, engineering sales. He did a lot of project management, but he sold heavy equipment and then did the project management to install the heavy equipment in the mining industry, pulp paper industry. He did it all, basically all his life.
So at that age, mid-20s, let's say.
75, I would have been 27.
27. At that age, did you know what you still know what you want to do in life?
Yeah, I want to be an engineer and do projects. I loved the project.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a Thanksgiving. So also in 1980, in 78, well, I went to work for him, and it was a Thanksgiving dinner. I would say 1977, 76. Thanksgiving dinner. I actually had a computer at the time. It was a North Star computer, and I was, the Apple IIe, one of the first computers out, and I was doing all the financial stuff for my dad's company.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really enjoying it. But it was a Thanksgiving dinner, and my dad and I were in my home office, and finally, my wife at the time came in and says, "I don't know about you, but you have 2 grandkids out here, and you have all the family and are sitting around and we're bored to death. And when are you guys going to come on and have, join the family?" And it dawned on me at the time that I was not happy doing stuff for him. He was bending over backwards to make me happy. And I said, literally a week after, I said, "I can't do this. I got to go find a job." So I went and found a job. Fast forward, I ended up working for BART, American Rapid Transit. Got hired as an industrial engineer, and the guy I worked for was a saint. I actually got my professional license, so I was the only registered IE in the department. BART had just started up operations.
Mm-hmm.
We had a lot of work to do.
This is in California?
San Francisco Bay Area.
Would you live there today?
No, that's why I left.
We'll get more to that later.
Man, but both my kids still live there. I had 3 grandkids. But about a year into my BART career, we had a study to do. Like I said, BART had started up, and the engineering department at the time had 140 people working for it, and the general manager says, "We had 140 people 2 years ago, and BART started running, and what are we doing with 140 people? So I want you to do an industrial engineering study on that department. Since you were in the Navy, I want you to, construction, I want you to compare us with the Navy construction." And I did. And I said, "You need 32 people who are in this department." And they go, "Okay."
Okay, let me pause you for a second. In today's world, if I want to learn something, what do I do? Go online, go to Google, learn. Back then, if you wanted to learn something, what did you do? How did you get knowledge beyond what you already knew?
You gotta go do it.
Doing.
Do it, or talk to, sit down and do what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
But no, the only way to really do it was to do it.
Yeah.
So, fortunately, because I was in in the Navy and did contracts. And
Like, how did you determine like we only needed 32 versus 140?
I use standards. What's like back in the Navy? The Navy said that they were doing construction management for 6%. Bart at the time was doing construction management for over 30%. So you compare it and said, well, why are you doing that? And I walked around and I talked to the guy. And one day I came across a guy and he's sitting there writing something in hand. And I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm writing a specification. I said, okay, for what? This is, well, the end of the line stations where the train operators went had a break room, but it had a toilet. That was it. We need to put microwave ovens in the break room. I said, okay, so what are you writing? He said, I'm writing, and he came up with a 32-page specification on a microwave oven. I said, why don't you go to the Sears catalog at the time and pick that microwave oven?
So you had common sense.
Well, you can't do that. I said, why can't you do that? He goes, we have to procure. I said, good. The Navy would say, procure an item similar to, if not identical to, page 42, item number 22, 2010, microwave oven. And that would take 10 minutes to write that up. And he goes, well, I've never thought of that. So, yeah. So the bottom line is the general manager said, well, who would you suggest operate? I gave him a list of 3 names. And they go, well, would you take that job to operate? Would you guarantee that you could operate with 32 people? I said, being cocky, I said, sure. He goes, good. You start Monday.
So for the listener, what was your salary at that time? What do you think?
$30,000
$30,000
in the Bay Area.
Is that above average?
No. Yes, it was. Well,
what year was that? 70s?
that was 1976.
So did you at the time think that was a lot of money?
No, I was living in a house that I bought for $51,000 and was paying. No, I didn't have a lot of money at all. No, so I was, at the time I wasn't 30 and I was named as a manager, not a director. So I was paid manager salary, but I more than doubled the salary I was getting at a construction company.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was pretty good. And then I ended up as a director, which raised my salary at the time in 1980 to close to 40,000. But in 1980, I just finished. I went to MBA and got my MBA from St. Mary's College.
Why?
I wanted to really learn the financial aspects of business.
Mm-hmm.
And I also wanted to learn, I really was intrigued with organizational behavior.
So did you actually get what you thought you would out of your MBA?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It was an executive level MBA, so it was night school. And we had professors that were teaching at Stanford during the day and at Cal Berkeley during the day.
So the actual real teachers. So a little about me, I actually have a bachelor's in business, I think. I think I was originally going to try accounting, and I was like, I don't know if I like all that. I don't want to sit in a desk all day. So I have a bachelor's in business. I have an MBA, and I have a master's in human resource.
There you go.
And I tell kids today, if I had to pay for that, I'd be sorely disappointed. Because I got mine to the VA. Because it's like, I don't think I would have gotten my money's worth out of it today. Or this is a few years ago. Because the teacher, like, I remember sitting in class. And then again, this is no knock to the guy teaching. Like, when I talk to my kid, like, I don't judge the person. I judge what they're doing, right? Their action, whatever. So the teacher's there, and he's teaching us about sales, whatever class this was. And at the time, I think I was in like life insurance sales. And so I raised my hand and I said, he's like, these are the 4 steps to sales. So I raised my hand and I said, sir, have you ever sold anything in your life? No. So what are you doing here teaching me how to do sales when you've never taught or you've never even done it? So that's when I was like, what's going on today, right? So back to your MBA. So you got an MBA, you got something out of it.
Let me tell you a story. It was almost identical to what you just said. So I had a course on economics, macro and microeconomics, 8-week semester. 4 weeks was supposed to be on micro, 4 weeks on macro and then micro. And we're doing,
This is your MBA program?
yeah, this is week 6 of the program. And finally, one of my classmates raised his hand. He says, we've been talking about microeconomics for 6 weeks. When are we going to get the macroeconomics? And the guy looks at him and says, I'm a professor at Stanford University. Macroeconomics has no place in this world. And this guy goes, oh, excuse me, I think you're wrong. And they start talking back and forth. And finally, the guy says, well, what gives you the credentials to say you're wrong? He says, I'm the vice president of finance for the Bank of America. I use macroeconomics every day on a global basis.
Yeah.
And for the next 3 hours, we sat there and listened to these two argue, and we learned more about the difference between these two because of, but the fast forward, the bottom line is I had a professor that taught small business administration.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, here's what it takes to run a small business. And he was a lawyer, an attorney, and he walked through, what it took to do a small business planning, all yada, 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 and the financial components of it. Fast forward, graduated in March of 1980, got my MBA. In April of 1980, I started my own business.
Right. That's how you.
So that education, that direct hands-on translated to me starting a world-renowned architectural firm with 2 other partners.
Yeah. So we're going to get into that. I think that's going to be super interesting. But last thing I want to say about academia is I think we have too many people who go from high school to college who then stay in academia their whole life. And it's like everything is theory.
Yeah.
You actually haven't done the thing. Right. And then you get stuck in theory world. And now you're the subject matter on whatever, and now you're teaching people on theory because you actually haven't done it. I would much rather professors that did the thing, are doing the thing, and then are now teaching. So like, have you heard of Gary Vaynerchuk?
No.
Big social media guy. And he's like, everyone thinks I'm a YouTuber. That's a side hobby. I actually run a multi-billion-dollar business. You just know me as a guy that's on YouTube, right? I'll listen to guys like that because he's like, I don't do YouTube for the sake of YouTube. I just do it because I think it's fun. For like Alex Termozzi, he's like, you guys see me on YouTube, but I actually run a business that helps other businesses be successful. That's where I get all my content. So that's like, I'm all about learning, but the guys teaching you, have they done the thing? Are they doing the thing?
Well, my pet peeve throughout in my entire consulting career is we would go after a project and then we would be told that we didn't win the project because Texas Tech Institute of Engineering won the project. I said, huh? What? And they go, yeah, Texas Tech Institute. I said, so you have a professor who's never done, this type of consulting before with a bunch of graduate students or undergraduate students doing all the work, and you're going to take their product over our product.
Yeah.
And they go, well, they're cheaper. And then they get a grant. And I'm going, go right ahead.
Yeah.
Later they'd come back and they'd say, we need you to come back.
You're like, yeah, because I do the thing.
Yeah. So, I can't tell you how many times I competed against, academia.
Yeah.
And you're right on.
So, let's go to start your business. You finish your MBA.
Started a business MBA.
Was that scary?
Yeah.
What inspired? Did you feel comfortable doing because your dad had done it? So like, hey, this is a path.
I felt more comfortable in the fact that I was working with this guy, John Weld, who was the professor and attorney. We actually hired him to help us as an advisor.
This is your early 30s now?
1980, so I would have been 32, 33, and just turned 32. I think the scariest part was, so one of my partners, a guy named John Vickman, was in the Navy reserves with me. And so he and I had known a lot. We bought a bunch of houses and did property management. And so he and I came back in and we got together, and he was know the story, but he was fed up with working for the architectural firm that he was working for. He was a structural engineer and an architect. And he was doing container terminals, which were brand new at the time. And he was told that he was going to be an owner or partner, and he was told that his partnership would be 2%. And he goes, partnership means a partner, equal partnership. And they go, not here. So we said, he came over one night, knocked on the door and says, I want to start my own firm. I want you to run it. You're going to be the business manager. I'll be the architect. You can do industrial engineering. We got this other guy that's going to be the structural guy. And I said, good, you got any clients? He goes, no, we're going to go and do it. But let's sell 3 of our houses, which was all of them at the time.
Yeah.
Take the money and put it into financing the corporation. So we did that. And our first project was with the Port of San Francisco and then American President Line.
So what was that project? Let's go into that.
Master planning of the port. And we started learning, at the time, the whole industry was changing, not to bore you, but the railroads became deregulated at the time. And
the rails as in like?
Railroads.
Okay.
And American President Lines, which was at the time a huge cargo steamship line, they were getting into container vessels and doing containers. And they had John had just built or was designed their terminal in Los Angeles, which was the first on the West Coast to open up. And they had an Oakland presence, but they actually had a San Francisco presence, but they wanted to move to Oakland. Bottom line is we told San Francisco that they could not handle containers because they couldn't get them in on double-stack trains through tunnels that would get to the port.
How did you land that job? Because he didn't have any prior experience doing that stuff.
John had connections.
Okay.
Both with APL and with the port. I got to know the people at the port, and we competed against it. And they said, here's a young firm that was going to charge $25,000, and every other firm was around was going to charge $100,000. So Dianne Feinstein was the mayor at the time.
Isn't that the same lady that?
Yep.
Did she die or someone recently died? She didn't die.
Pelosi died.
Nancy's still alive.
Then Feinstein died.
Yeah. I was like, I think she just died.
Yeah.
While she was still in Congress.
Right. So, she was mayor at the time.
That's fun.
I don't know. So she sat down with us. I met her face to face, and she said, what makes you think you can do this project for $25,000? We said, well, we just started our firm.
We don't have much overhead.
We don't have much overhead, and quite frankly, we don't have anything else to do. So $25,000 for the next 3 months will pay our way through, and Buffy goes, great.
So I think this is a really valuable lesson for listeners. Is you started something, but you also had some advantage because you had connections. Because people who are listening to this are young or wherever you are in life. Sometimes you're like, well, how do I know what to start or know or do? It's like, well, what do you have connections in? What do you have an unfair advantage in? And so your buddy is like, well, you didn't just start something random, but not because you had connections into whatever that was. And the other lesson I learned from this is your first few jobs don't necessarily make you a millionaire. Your first few jobs, you learn the thing. And so you're not trying to, it's hard to put a price on experience. So you didn't need to make a ton of profit. Probably worked at a loss, possibly. But the important thing was the experience. Eventually, you knew you had to make money. I think a lot of people forget, like, how do I know what to do? Well, what do you have some advantage in? And then B, your first job should be at a loss probably because you have to prove yourself.
Absolutely.
And you may not even know you're doing that. You probably I don't know if you thought through that at all.
No, we did a conscious effort.
Okay, so you knew what you were doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
But go back to one thing. I think the biggest in sales, and it turned out our success was selling to the world something unique. We had something that was unique. It was containerization. It was intermodalism. It was cutting edge technology that we had experience doing, and that made us.
How'd you have experience in it at first?
Starting off with working for APL and the Port of San Francisco. Now we would go to Port of Los Angeles, and we did the master plan for the Port of San Francisco.
But I'm saying that first job, though, he didn't have that.
Oh, but John had it.
Okay, so
as the firm, He said, I designed the APL terminal in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I remember watching something so before the container, was everything just random sizes before that?
Yeah, it was bulk loaded into a hole on a container.
And then some random dude, do you know who this, was it American? Was it European? Who designed the container?
Oh, McLean.
Was that American?
Yep.
And so he decided, why don't we just make everything a rectangle?
Right. He started doing that in Sealand in 1990.
Yeah, I remember learning something about it because it's something you can put it on a train, you can put it on a boat, and you can stack it.
Yeah. At the time, you couldn't put it on a train. I mean, they did piggyback, which is a trailer on a.
So before the container, it was just not very efficient.
You put it on a trailer to go overland. You put it on a cargo ship. It came on a pallet. You put a pallet down inside.
So it was very inefficient.
Very inefficient, and labor was everything was handled. So yeah, containerization changed the industry. The Railroad Staggers Act of 1983 changed the railroad industry, where it said you're deregulated. So what APL did was they said APL went to Union Pacific and says, rent me locomotive power. I want to build and operate my own train. I want to run my train on your tracks.
So before that, you couldn't do that.
No. So the railroad,
they had a monopoly on it.
Yeah. So the railroad said, sure, we'll do that. So APL, and again, and Bill Hubbard, designed the intermodal car that could double stack a container on it and pull it around and unload it and load it, and the efficiency just took off. When we started looking at it, we would have a graphic that says, in 1984, there was 3 trains that left Oakland going to the East Coast. And fast forward 10 years later, it's 3,500 trains leaving, the West Coast going to the East Coast.
So it was private companies that helped, because we won't get too much into it today, but it's like private, some people say we need big government so they can organize everything. And then you have the counter arguments like, no, you need innovation, which is done by private companies because they want to figure out how to do it the most.
You need big government to incentivize private industry.
Yeah.
So, the Staggers Act deregulated the railroads. It got the government said, no, you're too big for your britches. You need to allow some innovation.
Yeah.
So the railroads were their own worst enemy. So it took government at the time to relay it. Now go back to your question you asked. 1980, you probably weren't around, but the prime rate was 17%. Home mortgages were in the 28%.
Yeah, people are crying at 7 today.
That's the Reaganomics that came in. So that was 1980. Reagan got elected in the fall of 1980. But, that was the Jimmy Carter. You couldn't get a loan. At any percent, it was ridiculous.
Yeah. So people at the time thought it was hot.
No, people were scared to death. You couldn't get business loans. The profit margin was zilch. That's how Reagan got elected was Reaganomics in terms of turning it around. But we started a company, and the first thing we said was we can't use debt.
Right.
We can't go to a bank. First of all, we're too young to go to a bank, which was probably helpful. So we said we got to finance this ourselves. So what I ended up doing is not only did we sell our properties and put that into the company, but I didn't take a salary for the first year. Neither did John. We had to pay the other guy because he had 4 kids or 5 kids, and we said, I need money to live on. So
there's 3 of you.
But
So that first job, they wanted you to do what?
The master plan.
Okay.
So we did a market forecast. We looked at what.
This is with minimal computer use.
Yeah, with no.
That is just brain power.
Well, okay. Well, I had the computer. We had a Kermenco computer with the floppy disk.
Yeah. So what data did you need to help make your decisions?
We needed marketing data. What was coming in, how it was coming in. Was it containerized? Was it bulk? The big thing, and if you know San Francisco, was north of the Bay Bridge was becoming Pier 39. Attraction. South of the Bay Bridge was industrial area. So they said we want to design the industrial area and compete against hotels and condos and restaurants that were taking over the northern part of the waterfront. So we collected data. We talked to people. We talked to the carriers. Why would you call San Francisco? Why wouldn't you call San Francisco?
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, San Francisco, Oakland was the largest container complex in North America.
Wow. So what was the outcome of that project?
Outcome was San Francisco said that we're not going to be a container port. In fact, they said, we're not really going to be a port at all. Our best and highest use is tourist and
Tours. So they paid you $25,000 to say thanks.
well, we didn't have to spend several $1 million to upgrade our facilities not to get them. But fast forward, that led us to the mid 1980s, and the Port of Los Angeles came out with a master plan, because at the time Oakland was still the number one container port in North America.
Mm-hmm.
And LA Long Beach, the two ports together, says we want to become the West Coast container hub. Do a master plan for the entire ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach.
Your company did that?
We did that.
So what was the outcome of that?
LA Long Beach became it's number 13 in the world, but it's the North America's largest container complex.
So you're advising them, but are you also teaching them like, hey, this is what you need to do this?
We're advising it. We're running models. Came up with simulation models. We came up with a huge Excel spreadsheet, on 9 different cargo types, and what's the cargo forecast for these.
So you had to know your ships.
Had to know the ships. Had to know the industry. Had to know the market.
Yeah.
We had a ton of sub-consultants. I had to know the environment.
It's crazy. This is all before internet. This is all before.
Yeah.
Today, it's like
I can do all that research online. No, we hired people that were especially that.
You remember how much that job cost?
Oh yeah, we got $750,000 for that job.
So that was a payday.
No, it was. We teamed with C.H. Trim Hill, which at the time was a large engineering company. So we used a lot of their resources. I think VZM, Vikram and Zachary Miller, which is the name of the company.
Yeah.
I think we walked away with about $450,000 in our own pocket, which made the day for us.
Yeah.
But more importantly, right after that,
so you got a train.
Yeah. More importantly, right after that, we got jobs in Australia, we got jobs in Hong Kong, we got jobs in Israel, we got jobs in Europe, we got jobs in South Africa.
So you had a few jobs. You showed, hey, I can do what I can do. And now, because you did a good job with those, you started getting calls from other ports.
And part of it was, and the other thing too, is we became very, and this goes back to your listeners, we became very active in the industry. So we would talk at every industry conference. We would show a plan and say, this is what we did, and this is the new technology coming online. And so ports that were not, Port of San Diego had never done a container, they go, can you help me?
So you're getting hired by city.
Well, port authorities are either owned by the state or by a city.
Mm-hmm.
They're not private.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
So what are some other interesting projects you worked on?
I did the master plan for the Port of New York, New Jersey, which put them on the map. Did the master plans for Miami, Charleston, Jacksonville.
How big did your firm get to?
At one point in time, we had close to 80 professionals.
Mm. Interesting. So it was over time, and that's what you did for, how long did you do that for?
Well, we sold the firm in 1995.
So 15 years you had that firm for.
And we became members of Trans-Systems Corporation.
Why'd you sell?
That's a long story that if this is public is probably not.
Okay.
I need to get legal disclosures for that. No, we took a poison pill.
Okay.
one of our senior managers went off and did something really stupid. And we had to take a poison pill.
So it's not something you necessarily wanted.
No, there's nothing we wanted to.
That's unfortunate. Yeah, I mean, you hear the hostile takeovers, you hear of.
Yeah, this was a poison pill where we said, we need to get out from under this potential issue. And we told our attorney, go find us a buyer, and our financial advisor, and they went out and came back with 2 or 3 buyers. And they interviewed us, we interviewed them. And we picked what we thought was the best offer.
Was it a reasonable offer?
Oh, it was very good.
So it was a lucrative offer.
For me, it didn't work out at all.
Financially or in the work?
Well, the Trend Systems said, great, we want to become national. You guys are become our West Coast office. They're based out of Kansas City. We had an East Coast office and a West Coast office. They didn't have any coastal offices. So we said, you guys are going to become the coastal offices. I was given a job as the senior vice president, and zero authority. They said, well, you can do international work. And I said, great, because I had been doing the Hong Kong and Australia. And
so you'd be going to these ports and staying.
Oh yeah, and working there. And they said, you take over the international. Well, I go, great. And they go, but we don't have a budget for you. So you're going to have to live off the Oakland office budget. And the Oakland office manager was not good at managing projects. And so bottom line is I got no support. They said, go get international work, but we can't pay you for it.
So how old were you at that time? 95.
So I was 45, 40, 46, 47.
So was that depressing?
Well,
to go through that stage when you got...
Yeah, we had the internal issues where we had to take the poison pill. I had a new employer that really didn't know how to handle growth, and they were still very much focused on the Kansas City operation and what they wanted to do. So that's when I said, and I was getting divorced at the time.
So if you don't mind, for myself and also for the listener, I think I get it's a delicate, sensitive topic to talk about that personally, but like, you're married to this person, you have kids together. Were you happy during that phase?
Yeah. I mean, we've been married 26 years.
Yeah.
You missed it when I said her maiden name is Greasy. If you ever heard of the quarterback for the Miami Dolphins, that was his sister.
Oh.
In the NFL Pro Football Hall of Fame. His son, my nephew, is now the quarterback coach for the 49ers. So, it was there, but Joyce had lost her dad at a young age, and she had a great family. It was a very intense family, but she had no relationship with the brothers. She had a tough time.
Probably didn't help a lot that you were gone a lot.
No, absolutely. I was gone a lot. I was traveling overseas a lot. I was and we got involved in the Catholic Church and several movements in the Catholic Church. We both loved them. And one day I woke up and says, I think I'm spending too much time doing that. And I wasn't getting, I'm consider myself very religious, but not overly religious. And Joyce was falling in love with it.
She wanted to be there all the time.
She wanted to be there. In fact, she really wanted to be a nun. And and quite frankly, I told her that. And she said, she admitted to it. She said to me, if I wasn't married to you, I'd be in the sisterhood. I said,
that's not the worst thing, though, she could say.
No.
I have a story, but I don't know if I should share it. I recently talked to a friend of mine from elementary. I've known him since elementary. I don't do much on Facebook. I have 24 friends, most of them family. Because I went, there was a season in my life where I had like maybe close to 1,000. I just went through and deleted everything. Good. I don't do much on social media. Zero, almost. Only reason my parents see this, only reason I have Facebook now is just to make sure my mom hasn't posted something awkward about
There you go. That's where is on it.
So anyways, I saw him on Facebook. I was like, man, that's interesting. Some of the things I see posting. So I call him and he's like, I've been married to this girl for 11 years. She tells me this news and it destroyed our marriage. Basically like open, lie, stuff like that. And it's just like, as I say, saying someone's a nut, that's not the worst news in the world. Cause
Right.
like,
No, that was, yeah.
they're like, all right,
No,
it didn't work out.
we both take pride that we raised two great kids.
Yeah.
Got them through school, got them through college. But like I said, we looked at each other one day and
Was that a difficult decision to make for you, for both of you?
tremendous difficult decision. Quite frankly, I don't think she's ever got over it. And my problem is, and Cindy knows about it, is I hurt her, and I didn't want to hurt her.
So you were the one like, let's do it.
Well, I said, I can't live this way.
Yeah, because neither one of you are happy.
Right. And at the time, Trans-System says, well, we'll start a Northwest Division. You go up there and start a Northwest Division. And I said, okay, fine. So I went up here and started calling on the ports. And then my ex-partner at the time, John, says, no, I'm in charge of ports out of Reston, Virginia. You can't talk to ports. I go, what do you mean I can't talk to ports?
And this was the guy you start the business with?
Yeah, the VZM. He was the V in VZM. And the guy in Oakland was saying, I'm paying your salary. You need to go talk to WashDOT. And I'm going, I don't know anything about highways. I've been doing containers and intermodal work, all my life.
Yeah.
And
But it sounds like you had a falling out with your old business partner.
oh yeah, big time. Well, he was the poison pill that we had. I think.
Yeah. And not to get too much into the details, but just for the listener, it's like you can have a strong partnership with someone, but just be aware that over time, just like in a marriage, just like in anything, that can fray or that there can be issues there. And just be aware of that. Be aware, like, part of the reason I started all this was when people are young, they think they know everything. And it's like, you know nothing.
Yeah,
right? I know nothing. And I acknowledge that. And I try to be self-aware. My wife would say otherwise. I try to be self-aware enough to be like, I don't know nothing. The reason why I talk to people is so they can help me. Hey, there's some landmines here to look out for, right? You've lived life. You've been through a lot of stuff. The human experience, it's cyclical, right? The certain situations are different. Like, you didn't have cell phones before. My kids have cell phones now, right? So there are certain different things that can change. But as far as like as human beings and how we act and behave and perform, once you understand like generally how humans act, then it's like, oh, okay, this is something to watch out for. And that's why I do this. But also, I have a lot of nephews and nieces, 16 to 22. And it's like, man, I wish when I was a kid or a young adult, someone would have come up beside me and like actually mentored me in life, so I didn't have to go through all.
I think the thing that destroyed BZM was honesty and integrity. We had a person that lost their honesty and integrity. They were defrauding us.
Yeah.
And we found out that they had bought a home on our and we were paying for it.
Yeah, because you trust whatever.
And so, in order to get out from underneath that, and part of that then, covered over into the marriage that I had, where, you couldn't be quite open with it because, Joyce was extremely close to, the partner's wife that was affected by it.
Personal.
And so, you find out you were keeping secrets, and secrets is the worst thing in a marriage.
Yeah.
Or in a partnership.
Yeah.
You've got to be open. You got to be. So, Cindy and I have a great relationship, and it's open and it's trusting.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to celebrate our 25th anniversary in August, and so it's
So 2 marriages over 25 years.
Yep.
That's rare, I think, maybe.
Yeah. But no, this this is right for me. It's right for Cindy, and it's right for our 4 boys and our 7 grandkids.
Yeah.
It took them a while. My 2 boys took a while to realize that it wasn't Cindy that broke up the marriage. It was,
Yeah.
but
Were you depressed after that, or were you happy you got out under that? The reason why I asked, the reason I don't mean to drill down on you, but it's more your story, because it's like there's a lot of men right now. I have good friends that are thinking about marriage or thinking about divorce, and they don't know what it looks like. Because again, when you don't have perspective, it's hard to know what it looks like after the fact. They're in the suck. They're in the pain. They're in the trial. Hopefully, I'm never in this position.
well,
But it's like, for the listener, because divorce is very high, 50%, give or take, in America. So it's like, if you're in that state, what happens after? What are the conversations before it?
so I came up. I was separated at the time. Came up to the company moved me up to be the Northwest group, like I was starting to say, and I reconnected with Cindy. She was in Portland, I was in Bellevue, and it wasn't going to work out with the company. So, and Cindy said, you need to go back and resolve things with Joyce.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back in January early 1977,
Mm-hmm.
I went through counseling. And I am going to say right now, you asked me if I was depressed. I was prevented from being depressed because of the counseling I went through.
So it helped.
Absolutely. So I went through counseling with Joyce, and that's where we learned. And I tell folks that change cannot occur overnight. And if one partner, be it a marriage or a business partner, expects you to change overnight, that's impossible. Not that you can't and don't want to try, but my counselor in California basically said, "Okay, Joyce, what would you want Mike to do and change?" And she said it, and the counselor said, "That's impossible." And she goes, "Why?"
Do you remember what she wanted you to do? Or you don't want to share?
Well, she wanted me to spend more time with her. She wanted to spend more time with the church. She wanted me to, basically to sit back and she wanted to retire. Her goal in life, and God bless her for it, was, she said, my goal in life is to sit on the porch with my grandkids and watch them grow. And as we talked about before, that's a period of 10 years before they don't longer want you to sit on the porch and watch them grow, which our grandkids are now. They're saying, I got my own life.
Yeah.
Thanks, Grandma and Grandpa. But no. But there was different things she wanted me to change to do. And the counselor said, that's impossible. He said, let's assume for the minute that Mike did that.
Right.
And you got everything you wanted. History has shown that Mike will resent you for that for the rest of his life, because you forced him to change and you didn't change. So, Mike, what do you want to change? What do you want Joyce to do to change? And I wrote off a bunch of stuff, and she says, I don't want to do that. And he said, bingo. If you change for Mike, you'd be resentful. If Mike changed for you, he'd be resentful. So it's kind of like, that was the aha moment. It's like, okay, is there a mutual point that we can meet? And we basically said no. And then I moved up to Bellevue. Cindy was still, I physically moved to Bellevue, bought a condominium. Cindy was still down in Portland, and we were seeing each other on the weekends. And she said, I'm not going to go one step further until you get counseling on how to move forward with your life. Because I don't want you depressed or thinking about what you left in California. And I want you to focus on you. And I did. And that was probably the best advice that she ever gave.
So before, this is what, late 30s, early 40s?
Age-wise?
Yeah.
Late 40s.
So late 40s. Before late 40s, had you ever been involved with counseling?
No.
And I think that's interesting because it's, I don't know if counseling was a big thing back then, but it's like a lot of men don't actively think about personal things that often and actually think through until they've been through some type of situation. Or now I think society's saying, hey, maybe it's helpful to do it at a younger age.
Well,
This is like, it's funny because I don't do counseling, but doing these conversations with people, it's like a form of that.
so in my point of view, there's three types of counseling. There's the sitting down with a priest and either confessing and talking to things about them, which was good. I did that. I did do that. The other one is getting together in a group of guys that you trust, and talk about things.
Did you have that as an adult?
Oh yeah, I had that. But did I go to them and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about leaving Joyce or separating"? And no, that was too personal, and they knew her, so no. And the third one,
Easier to talk to a stranger about your problems.
the third one is the key: professional counseling.
Yeah,
Not some guy, you're not my counselor.
right.
You and I can talk about things and you can give me your opinion. But I have grown to know and love professional counselors. And I'm not afraid to admit that I've seen several of them.
Yeah, I think
Cindy and I've seen several of them. Joyce and I saw several of them. I've seen several of them on my own for various issues. And
what did they do? Did they help you think through stuff?
that's basically what they do. They can't and they won't tell you what to do. They said, I'm not here to do that.
What if you asked them?
Oh, I had an issue with my sister and who invited me to a counseling session with her counselor, and I about killed the guy because he wouldn't tell her the truth. He wouldn't say, you're wrong, you're doing this. So I said, I want your professional liability insurance coverage before I leave here because I'm going to sue the hell out of you because you are malpracticing. He goes, no, I'm not. I cannot. And I confirmed this with other counselors. I said, I cannot tell somebody what to do. I can lead them to the edge.
So legally, within their standard of care, not supposed to provide advice?
Unless they are
Self-harm or something?
Yeah, unless they're adamantly sure that you're going to commit self-harm to yourself or somebody else, then they can step in and stop it. But I don't, because...
Yeah, we're not talking about your sister's particular situation. No. It's more the concept of counseling.
No, and a professional counselor knows how to walk you to a point where you have to make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
And a professional counselor will tell you what the consequences are of these different decisions. But you have to come to the decision of which road to take and accept those consequences or walk through them with the counselor. So I'm a strong proponent of counseling.
Yeah, because, their job is to hopefully have perspective on life and then, like you said, offer different, hey, if you go down this path, this is an outcome. This is an outcome. This is an outcome.
I also strongly recommend that a professional counselor has a professional area of expertise, and you should not think one counselor is going to fit all.
Yeah.
So, do the research.
Yeah, if you're talking about a marriage guy.
Yeah, marriage guy.
To marriage.
Substance abuse, Do you
think it's helpful if that guy has had personal experience in that? Like a lot of substance, from the outside looking in, people who were addicted to whatever substance and got out, do you think they make better?
They have to have experience in that field.
They have to have a reason to be in that field.
Whether it's personal experience.
Or it's a loved one.
Or this one counselor I've been to, he says, I've counseled more than 100 men that are exactly in your situation. And here's my experience with all, the 100 men.
Yeah. This year, I'm making more of an emphasis to learn more about mental and emotional health. And so I do that there's a guy named John Deloney, and people just call in and talk about their problems. And he doesn't tell them what to do, but like you said, he helps them think through their problem and helps them. So I've been learning a lot from that. Just be like, oh, people do have real life problems. And
Well, one of the biggest things that my counselor told me, so I had a blind spot. And he said, you're not addressing this blind spot. And he goes, well, I know what's going to be. And he goes, no, you don't know what's behind that door.
yeah.
You need to open the door and you need to talk about what's behind that door. And it took me quite a while for me to open that door.
So in your experience, do you think it would be helpful in life if you had friends you could do that with? Or it's just,
No, you need a professional.
you need a professional because,
You need your friends.
yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times I went to counseling and then went back to my friend and we talked about it. And the friends would either say, well, that guy's full of something or yeah, he's right on.
Yeah.
So, bouncing what I talked about with the counselor off my friends and close friends helped me a lot.
Yeah.
But they said it either adjudicated what had been said or they said, yeah, you got to take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah. That's interesting. There was a question about that. I forget what it was, but, so got divorced, really tough on her, but the kids were out by then.
Oh yeah, they did.
Yeah.
They actually, well, they were. So here's the good story. My oldest son didn't want to see me anymore.
He was pretty hurt by it,
He was very, very terrified by it.
but he was an adult by then.
He's an adult by then. And in fact, he was in a relationship by then. And in fact, actually, he was married by then. But for the first couple of years,
Because he thought you hurt mom.
Yeah.
And I don't like that. Even though you guys had a good relation before that.
Yeah, and we still have a good relationship now. But his wife had been through a two-family, been through a marriage where she was the outsider. And her mom had married into, a stepfather for her. And she was excluded from the family because the stepfather, had his own family.
Mm-hmm.
And she told Jim, she said, that ain't going to happen. You're going to learn to live and love Cindy. And we met down in Seal Beach, which they were living at one point in time. And Jim is probably one of the strongest supporters of Cindy right now that there could ever be.
Mm.
It's a great relationship.
Mm.
But it took Tammy, the wife,
time and effort.
to hit him over the head and says, wake up. You have, we're not going to go through the next 50 years, and especially with grandchildren, with you with a chip on your shoulder.
Yeah.
If there is, bring it out. Let's talk about it.
Mm. That's good. You were able to. So, question, was there ever a phase before then, like, right now, my kids are young enough where they still like me, which is good. And I hope that stays. But was there ever a phase where the boys where they kind of pushed you away?
No.
So you were always good friends. That divorce happened, so that one of them was like, hey.
Right. But he still was congenial to me, but he did not want to talk to Cindy.
Yeah.
So, no.
But up until then, you always had a good relationship with your boys. Because you didn't push them too hard, sound like, but you did make them uncomfortable, but not to the point where
again,
they resented you.
I think my dad, I'm 10 years old. My mom is in, hurting, but he had to go to Europe. And so he took me out of school for a month and I toured Europe with him.
While your mom's sick out.
My mom's sick, and she had family that could come over and take care of her. But I spent many a night alone in a hotel in a foreign country. I spent 3 days with a family in Sweden who didn't speak a word of English, and I didn't speak a word of Swedish, but he trusted them, and I had a great time.
Yeah.
But I learned independence at a young age. I went back to Purdue University. As I said, I'd never been there before at a visit. I'd been there as a young kid with my parents, but I boarded a train, left Seattle, and then found my way back to Purdue on my own. No parents were there because he was over in Europe on a job.
Yeah.
And he didn't come see me for 3 months. So I started college virtually on my own. So I raised my kids, and Cindy raised her kids, with the idea that you have to live on your own.
Strong and independent.
And be independent. We're not,
You told the boys you're gone at 18?
No.
Was that said, or you raised them at such a point where that was a natural?
that was a natural, both families had a natural say, it's time for you to move on.
Yeah.
Once you go to college, get a job, and find a place to live. I mean,
I think there's a lot of men that are now staying with their parents into
there's a tremendous amount of people that's doing,
in their 30s.
and that's bad.
Yeah.
That's bad. Well, so yeah, both of them said, I got to get a job, and I'm in a relationship that I want to pursue, and we want to start a life on our own. And to their credit, none of them came back and said, can you help? Can you help me?
Mm-hmm.
I said, we paid for their education, so we're paying off their loans. But we said, that's what we owed you, and we'll continue to do that. But, feel free to make your own life.
Yeah. So now you're in your 50s, new wife, new career, same career? New job?
I got hired by a bunch of engineering companies in the senior position, senior director.
Mm-hmm. Same type of thing, though, consulting for?
Consulting, doing designs, and operations analysis and master planning for container terminals and intermodal yards throughout the world.
So when you were doing that, did you think of the Suez Canal came up, like some of the drama there, or was it when it got stuck?
Oh, yeah.
Did that ever affect, I think you were retired at that point, but did you have to think about stuff like that when you were planning? People don't think about shipping until, why is
right.
There was a lot of drama during COVID, right? There's all this stuff. Here's something that sounds crazy to me. So we have, what are the dock workers called?
Longshoremen.
Longshoremen. Do you understand that industry?
Oh, absolutely.
Explain that to the listener. Because when someone halfway explained it to me, I was like, that makes zero sense. It doesn't seem to function very efficiently.
Well, the longshoremen go back.
Hey, it's hard to become a longshoreman. And they get paid ridiculous.
They get paid handsomely. But it's a union. And it's one of the strongest unions.
Like a mafia.
It's one of the strongest unions you'll ever see. And that can be good and it can be bad. But it's definitely a brotherhood, which is a sisterhood nowadays. But the longshoremen handle everything on the waterfront. From checking in the cargo at the gates to operating the crane, operating the truck.
Sounds like there's no competition.
No.
And when you don't have competition, that leads to possibly unhealthy habits.
Well, the ILW, the International Warehouses and Longshoremen Union, controls the west coast of Canada and the U.S. Every port, every terminal on the U.S. and British Columbia west coast is controlled by the ILW. The Gulf Coast and the East Coast has the International Longshoremen's Association, ILA, which is not as strong. And so there are competing ports. For instance, Georgia and South Carolina are state-owned ports, and those employees are state employees. They're not longshoremen.
So they're probably not paid as much.
No, but they have different benefits. So
Do they work as hard?
Yeah. Then I think the work is equitable. And then you have non-union ports, some terminals, that are non-union.
How do those function? Competitively or?
Well, in the industry, you won't get a container vessel calling them because the container vessels have to call ports that have longshore labor, and the longshore labor at the port Jacksonville says, you called on a non-union port, I'm not going to unload your ship.
Well, yeah, stuff like that. It's just like, why is it so?
They have a stranglehold on.
So what? The government had to step in and try to to break that up, to make it more competitive.
No, the answer is no, because you have the right to work. You have the ability to maneuver, and the steamship
But
company.
is it efficient for the client, the customer, or could it be done? Could it be?
It can be definitely done. Well, okay. So the current contract they just negotiated, we'll go back several years ago. The contract that was negotiated by the carriers with the ILW allowed for automation. And so there's a terminal in Los Angeles, which is fully automated. And it's very cost effective, very efficient,
And run 24/7.
Can run 24/7. There is longshore labor there handling it, but it's a reduced size.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about injury, sickness.
Right. Well, the functions are different. But the union and PMA, the Pacific Maritime Association, who is the management side of the equation, negotiated. Well, this last contract, the negotiations were all about automation. It's like, you went too far left time. You got to back off. You cannot no longer automate.
So they're stifling innovation because they want to pay the workers.
They want to keep their members healthy and guaranteed. So there's two types of longshore labor. One is what they call steady labor, which says, I'm Terminal A at a port, and I'm going to hire you, but I'm going to guarantee you a full-time job. Whether there's a ship here or not, or whether you're going to do something for me for 2,080 hours, which is 52 hours, or 52 weeks, that's 40 hours. Yeah, I'm going to pay you for that. And I'm going to pay, you get your health benefits and your vacation and all that stuff through the union. But, I'm going to guarantee you that I'm going to pay the union for 2,080 hours of your time, plus overtime. Versus casual labor, long-term labor, which is, you go down to the union hall every morning. And
that's this, I know about that, where you don't know if you're going to get work.
Right. And a ship comes in, a terminal calls up, says, I need 6 A men and 6 B men. And if you're on the list and qualify as an A man, then you go to Terminal B and go to work.
That part sounds crazy. You show up, you don't know if you're going to get work. Like, how can you consistently provide a stable income like that if you're a B? Because a B is just trying to become an A.
Yeah.
But a B could be a B for a while.
Oh, absolutely.
It's so crazy.
Why? No, I've known several B guys that have other jobs.
Right, which is just like, it's such an insane way. Like, imagine if I worked at Google and Google's like, yeah, they don't need to do it.
What they like is you go down to the union hall and it's getting better because they got, they're saying, I'll fill out my availability, online. So I don't have to really physically check in, and I'll know on Monday morning if I have a job Tuesday or Wednesday, and if I don't, I could go to my UPS or FedEx job.
Yeah. So there was a time period you had to go in.
Yeah.
Right.
And some ports still require that.
Yeah. That's just so it's 2024.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why are we modernizing some of this stuff? Why is it so antiquated? Or imagine a tech job doing that. Like, people would be like, what are we doing?
Well,
a retail job
or part of the skill. A crane operator is worth his weight in gold.
Yeah.
If he can move 30 to 35 boxes.
I'm not doubting their skill. It's just the way the business is run.
But that's part of it. I laugh about my university, which has changed, but it's 125 years of tradition unhampered by progress. And so that's the ILW. They've been doing this for over 200 years.
So you
same way.
think it's ripe for innovation, but
Yeah, but why? Part of it's just the, what service were you in?
Army.
Okay, so look how much tradition is in the Army
Yeah.
that could be enabled better by technology. A lot of it is,
Mhm.
but there's a lot of tradition, a lot of custom that, you still need that drill sergeant yelling at you.
Yeah. Well, now I don't even know if you can yell anymore. It's
Oh, they yell. Well, the Marine Corps did.
yeah. There's all
We heard them.
yeah. There's today's world. It's a different.
Well, I go back to the term hazing. There's rules of which you can do now.
Yeah.
But again, you can create the bonding experience like a football team where you're not degrading humanity.
Right. Yeah. Well, a couple last questions and then we'll be done. So looking in your 70s now, what do you talk about with your peers? What are you concerned about? What do you have concerns or like kind of what is your phase in life like now?
Well, so we have a group. It's a men's group. We meet regularly. The women have a women's group, but I think in our stage of life, socializing is really key and critical.
I think it's critical at every people just don't do it.
Right. And you need to do it. So Cindy's part of the women's club. We have a group bunko night, which is 12 couples. It's not bunko, it's a game night. We get together once a month. We have a men's group, which is 5 of us. And like we just got back off a cruise with some really good friends, neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're finding is Cindy and I love to do things. We love to travel. We love doing it with good friends.
Mm-hmm.
We love playing games. We love playing card games. So we do that with good friends. We do that with neighbors. You need to get out and, the biggest fear that we have with our generation is becoming, a shell. And COVID was
the worst
because people became a shell. And,
yeah.
Even still nowadays, there's still, no. So to answer your question, what we talk about and what scares us the most is the lies and the fake news that is being perpetuated. And
do you care about politics?
Oh, absolutely.
So you guys do talk about that. You're concerned about it.
We're very concerned about it. We're very concerned about, the choices and why in the hell isn't the younger generation taking over this country? Why are we letting, folks over 70, run the country? It's, I know my skills, I know my strengths, I know what I can do, but I also know I had knee surgery.
Yeah, I think Feinstein was in her 80s, and she died in
close to her 90s. So.
Yeah, she died in Congress.
Yeah,
how functional was she?
I think the whole Supreme Court, the whole Congress.
So you guys talk about that stuff.
Absolutely, and we got to say, if you're over 75, you're done. Mandatory retirement.
Yeah,
of all senior officials at all levels. And what really ticks us off is the younger generation is not coming in on board. I mean, they try to, but they're not doing it, mm-hmm. And they need to do it.
So here's my challenge to you, and maybe you already do. And I don't quite know how you would do this, but
thanks a lot.
Part of the reason I started this was young and old people don't communicate unless it's maybe family. And so you have all this wisdom, you have all this knowledge, you have all this perspective. Young people don't. So it's like, what's the shortest way to learn something? Through experience. But my hack in life is I want to take someone else's 30,000 hours and whatever. If I'm really interested in whatever field, yeah. I'm going to take your 30,000 hours. So I don't have to go do it for 30,000 hours. So personally, it's like if I want to understand health and fitness or whatever, in 2023, 2024, You can now read books, listen to podcasts if you want to learn how to do such and such such. One thing we fail to do, I think, as a society is we just don't. You're hanging out with people your age. These young people are hanging out with young people. They're not getting any smarter. They're just talking about their little problems. And it's like, how do we can't force friendships, but how do we force people to regularly, like, how often does someone my age come and communicate with you?
I would, I don't think you'll find anybody in my group that would turn down or offer.
And that's the thing. So I was talking to a gentleman, he's 62, and talking to someone in their 70s actually very different than someone in their 60s. The guy in the 60s, he's actually a marriage counselor. I'm actually going to release his podcast this Friday. But we were talking, and I was talking to him, and I was like, okay, you actually try to help people. But he says, I only ask for help. I only offer or give. He was a basketball coach too, so he liked coaching. He did a lot of that stuff. But he's like, I only will help if they ask for help. And my pushback to him was, most people aren't going to ask for help. So how do you bridge that gap? Because I'm in the same boat as you, where you're like, I think most older people, if they're not so self-concerned about themselves, they are willing to have a conversation. So I want to help bridge that gap somehow to be like, hey, in my 20s, I would have loved it if some guy would have just, even at the gym, some dude would have been like, hey, I've been around the block a few times. Let me help you through life. No one ever did that. I'm not going to sit here and complain and whine about it, but it's like, how do we make that more common? Like, how do we make that, hey, this is a casual, this should be a healthy thing to do. Sure, have friends your age, but also have friends that have older than you, other than your grandparents, that can actually speak into your life so that you're not over here mumbling through life.
So I was part of a group. Oh God, I forget the name of it. It was called like the veterans. It wasn't the VA or
Yeah.
but it was a group, and they said, is anybody willing to go and talk to groups? And we said, yeah. And it was schools, clubs, whatever, about, this is, I can talk about Antarctica. I can talk about being in Antarctica. I can talk about being in the Navy. I gave them a list of stuff I can talk about. And I got called on several occasions to go and talk to groups. And in each one, they'd say, well, are you willing to meet one-on-one, or one-on, the small groups afterwards? I said, yeah, absolutely. Never got a call. And after a while, and I'm going, I'm starting to get a complex about, well, I'm maybe boring, but, I must have gone and talked to 3 or 4 groups, schools,
Yeah.
about, what being a veteran's like. And, they'd ask questions and they'd all go away and they'd come back and they said, well, the teachers don't have time for that anymore. So they wiped out the whole program. And it's like, okay, we'll do it after school,
Yeah, I think that age group needs a lot of help, but I'm thinking like 18 to 30. If we can really help these guys get on like the right track, or just they need. Okay, let's look at civilization 200-300 years ago. Well, people didn't live that long. I was researching, like, people only lived to 40. He didn't live till you're 70, 80, 90 like you do today. So now I was like, well, I guess he didn't really have older generations. People just died.
So I have a question. How many social clubs do you belong to?
My social club is the gym. So I'm a member of LA. And,
That's not a club.
I know. So my social club is probably church and gym, but actual, like, hey, because right now in my phase in life, it's my family.
Okay. So go back 100 years. What was around? The Elks, the Eagles, the Moose, Kiwanis, Rotary, groups.
Right.
Most of the time they were men, but there are fraternal organizations that created the opportunity for this discussion.
Yeah.
And then created the benefits that says, okay, by the way, we'll have a beer, we'll do this. But they came together as groups.
Yeah.
You don't have that anymore.
Yeah, we don't have the wisdom being passed. So the young people keep making the same dumb mistakes.
Rotary and Kiwanis are struggling to get business professional members. You would be a perfect person to join Rotary or Kiwanis because of A, it's a business connection, but B, they need people in your generation to come and socialize. And it's during the day, so you're not taken away from theoretically family life, but that's the type of organization that needs to be done. And that's the type of organization that we wouldn't go talk to. We'd give a talk. I gave probably a dozen talks on my life experiences to Rotary and Kiwanis clubs.
Yeah.
But they got fewer and far in between. And
you would make the argument your peers are more than willing to have relationships with younger people.
Absolutely.
Just in what avenue?
Yeah.
And how do you do it so it's not words are mandatory or because and you get it. You had the face where like most men, I'm fortunate enough where I don't have to I was talking to a buddy of mine. He's in his late 20s. Because we'll have deep conversations and he's like, Josiah, it's not that people don't care, it's just they don't have the time. When you're working 50, 60 hours, because I remember there was a time in my life where I worked retail where I would leave the house at 8 a.m., didn't have breakfast with my family, would be gone all day, didn't have lunch with them, didn't have dinner with them. Then I came home. It was an 8-hour day, but it was really 10 hours so it's like...
Well, especially had to commute to it.
Yeah, when you had the commute. So it's like, then you had an hour lunch break. So it's really a 10-hour day, not an 8-hour day. And so I had to put myself back in that shoes. That was 50 hours where I was just calm.
Right.
So it's like...
And that's what's happening.
Yeah.
People are not here. I mean, they're not doing that.
Yeah.
They're not joining the clubs that need to have that connection.
Yeah. So that's sad. And so it's like, all right, this podcast, it is a way for people to hear stories and hopefully inspire. Oh. But also we need...
Tell them I'm open to talk to them.
We need real interaction because there is a lot of young men that are struggling. A lot. Some of them I know. And it's like, dude, I think you make a good case in point. Talking to professionals is helpful. But also, I think just having regular conversations with other adults. So,
Absolutely.
You know who Jordan Peterson is?
I've heard of him.
Really smart guy, trained psychologist, I think. He's either psychiatrist, psychologist. He's Canadian. And what he does is he wrote a book like 12 Rules of Life, and then he wrote another one, 12 More Rules of Life. But he says, one thing we don't do as society today is have mental combat. So when you're talking with your friends, you're engaging without realizing it. They are challenging your viewpoint, you're challenging their viewpoint, and over time you refine your viewpoint.
Well, I think one of the biggest issues we have today is politics.
Yeah.
You can't, in my generation, we would talk politics all the time. And I would accept what you live.
Yeah.
You might be a Democrat and you might be far left, but I knew what your points were. I understood it. I didn't try to convince you to come to my point of view, and you didn't convince me. We both listened and we both talked.
And you could still be friends.
And we'll still be friends. And nowadays, it's become very decisive.
Yeah.
And divisional.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'd love to talk to politics with everybody else as to why I do what I do. But, the moment somebody says, well, if you're not this, I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah, that's really sad. I'm an independent, so I like hearing both sides because it's like...
We need to hear both sides.
Right.
You have to hear both sides.
And so it's like, I want someone that's super pro-Biden to convince me, sell me on why Biden's amazing, right? And then you start hearing them and then they're like, that's not facts, that's opinions.
Or it's false news.
So then you listen to the subject. So yeah, we're not having enough of that. So yeah, this is something hopefully I can help push in the right direction as far as getting young men and women to engage with older people, because do they have all the answers? No. But can they help you gain perspective on life? without having to go to a professional.
I'm going to offer one more thing. Cindy got her two master's degrees in counseling. She was a high school counselor for 19 years. I'm going to speak for her, but she and I would love to talk to another couple, that has questions.
Yeah.
It could be about anything, but, I mean, we talked to our daughter-in-laws and our sons, and we did that. And
What age group did she work with?
well, she was high school.
High school?
And then she became she was at Pierce College, college, high school.
I actually took some credits from Pierce. Yeah, so I think that's huge because it's like, okay, we know there's plenty of old people out there. Is it demeaning to call someone old?
No. Well,
because I know some people go
back to life.
Right, so it's like, I try not to say people are old, but it's like, you're older than me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is, because I'm optimistic to say that I think there's plenty of people older than me and the seniors that are willing to have conversations with younger people. Just how do you do it in a manner that isn't forced, is good, is engaging, so that the couple, whatever. My thought is this: the reason why young people, they think their problems are special, they think their problem is unique, and therefore no one can help them. It's like, dude, you're not that special. You're not that unique because the human experience, we've all gone through it. Now there's different challenges you may face, but we all go through it. But you get caught in that problem because you don't realize that there is a way out. But if you don't have someone giving you perspective on it, then you get lost in that problem.
Well, I think there's false barriers put up.
Yeah.
My generation, the generation above us, it's like, well, you got weird music, therefore I can't talk to you.
Yeah.
People don't want to talk to us because you don't understand technology. You don't understand social media. And I don't. So teach me.
Right.
Talk to me about, social media. Just because I don't do it all the time or I'm not into it doesn't mean I don't want to learn about it or, doesn't put us on a different level. But I've had a lot of, people, you don't understand my life.
Yeah. One thing I think I'm going to start for fun. I don't know what I'm going to do, but just start, how there's trends, like there's usually a lot of bad trends. Like you would see like young kids, we're going to go eat Tide Pods. Oh, I wonder why that killed you. Or I wonder why that, right? So there's a lot of dumb trends, but it's like, I want to start a trend like talk to old people, right? Like, just have a conversation. Like I was at the restaurant the other day, Boston's, the day we didn't have internet. Old couple just came up and just wanted to talk to us. They saw my four kids, and it's like, let's make that fun and normal, and to go engage with random strangers, and maybe that can lead to whatever friendship. Because it's like, the reason why I like this with you and with just old people, I'm not selling you anything. I'm not trying to. I'm just trying to have a conversation.
Which is why I'm here.
And I don't get this. Like, I get no's all the time. That's just part of life. And I can't, like, a dude I met yesterday, initially he was all gung ho, and then today he's like, well, I guess he still works, and he's like, well, according to my company, I can't. It's like,
see, you're not.
Which is like, all right, whatever. Like, I'm not gonna force you.
He's reading too much into himself.
Or it's like, I want to keep my life private. I get that a lot.
I don't think I've discussed anything that, I'm ashamed of.
Right. And so when I tell him, it's like, dude, it's not about you. It's about your story.
Right.
And so, any last thoughts you want to share with me or to the listener that you?
This has been great.
Gained or learned. But yeah, this has been a lot of fun. I'll definitely take you up on if maybe myself or a couple that just wants to hang out. I'll be like, hey, I know a guy.
Yeah.
He'll professionally hang out with you.
Absolutely.
All right. It's a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.